And now, let us bring to the stage our special guests, Nancy Lyon and Adrienne Perez. Come on up. Welcome. Yes, here we are. The crowd's pretty well tenderized by now. I think we'll make short work of them.
No tea?
No tea. Well, we're thinking about adding it to the menu, actually. You guys, it's funny because I hadn't really realized that there was anybody in Austin doing what you guys are doing until I got on the, well, let's just call it the net for old time's sake. I got on the net and started poking around and found out that there was a whole thing called the Bioscience Incubator. And then I started sending emails around, and you must have been poking around the net a little bit too, because you emailed me back. And then we discussed that. But I wanted to just kind of, if we can, just by means of introduction, tell us about yourselves and what it is that you do for a living.
What do I do for a living? No, it's true. I run a bioscience incubator over at ACC across the street. Most people don't know what that means. I didn't know what it meant until I worked there for about 3 or 4 years. But it's leasable lab space for biotech startups. So the college outfitted it with all the equipment that a biotech startup would need, and it gives them a chance to take a go at it before they go spend all that money to build their own lab, buy all that equipment, and find out that their idea wasn't such a great idea in the first place. And so I work for ACC, but we run a facility that is full of people running their companies out of lab space that they rent from the college.
Which is to say, so like when we think of R&D, we think of people like this, and generally they work for some company that if you trace it back far enough, it's probably the Pentagon, who are doing this research. But then once I was there and I was touring around and looking around, there was all these people who had their little businesses going on. And I think you even said like one guy figured out a way that he could check the caffeine levels in bags of or in ground coffee beans and use that, and you could turn that around and charge the coffee companies money for getting certified caffeine levels and so forth. And that was just like a quick little thing that he did. And then you've got other people who are splicing genes and stuff.
Oh yeah. We're making this. We clone people all the time.
Yeah.
No, it's really interesting. When we set this up, the kind of understood assumption was that we would get companies doing therapeutics, diagnostics, medical devices. Those are the kind of 3 major categories in this field. And we didn't pick just one because we didn't even know if anybody was going to come, and so we certainly weren't going to cut our foot off. So we left the criteria being, do they need the equipment we purchased? Because we'd already bought it. We're not buying anything more. And it was shocking to find that food safety companies use the same equipment, and environmental remediation companies use the same equipment. We had a guy in there who was studying the crud in oil and gas pipelines, because apparently the corrosion in oil and gas pipelines is microbial, and if he could figure out what was living in there, he could sell his specialized concoction to the oil and gas industry and make a ton of money off them. So it was a shock to me. There's a lot of things you can do in a space like that that are not your typical things.
And we'll talk about some of the more bizarre applications of that. But Adrienne, tell us a little bit about what you do over at the Make It Center and what the Make It Center is.
Yeah, the Make It Center at Austin Community College is the ACC's way of trying to introduce college and career exploration to high school and middle school kids. So my responsibility is to create exhibits and STEM lab makerspace kind of activities that finds the convergence between science, advancement manufacturing, computer science, and art. Multiple pathways for people to come on, understand, hey, this shit's cool, and I want to be part of it, and ACC is a great stepping stone for that.
And one thing that I thought was so interesting is that art is placed on a similar plane to other things. So I think if you went to there's probably something like a Discovery Museum in St. Louis or whatever, where you go and you're like, wow, someday I could be a member of a SWAT team or something, It's like you go to this lab and it's just like, oh wow, maybe I decide I want to be a sculptor, maybe I decide that I want to make films and I want to make props that I animate. So it really is, there is a sense of waking minds up, which I thought was really commendable.
Yeah, absolutely. we see the light bulbs hit and light up on students' faces all the time.
Yeah.
And it's really rewarding. Yet just yesterday, we had the deafblind community come in, and we have this little project where they actually manufacture little tiny F1 cars. We're in association with Circuit of the Americas, so they got to actually make something, and that's a verb that they hardly ever have. And the look on those students' face is why we do that job.
Yeah, they were actually manufacturing racing cars and crashing them into one another when I was there.
And painting them up and
Yeah.
like, expressing themselves and imbuing that object with their own personality.
Yeah, it was highly concerning. Nancy,
They were not making tea.
Nancy, so when I was there visiting, there were a lot of real, I don't know, suspicious-looking people that were around and doing stuff like what. Now there really is. I asked, and I'm so embarrassed about this. There are probably people of us. I'm sure there are people of a scientific bent in the audience. I said, "Do you have a CRISPR machine?" And you went over and you opened the refrigerator and you showed it to me, and you're like, "Yeah, that's a CRISPR machine."
Yeah,
CRISPR's an enzyme, apparently, which I didn't know at the time, but you knew.
I knew it.
But there are people that are working on all that. What are some of the odder projects that you've had people come through there and work on?
One of them that I don't know if I would call it odd, but it was cool, is there was a guy that was a cancer biologist, and he had figured out that you can use cancer biology techniques to detect zebra mussels when it was still just the slime on the bottom of somebody's boat. So they could just use PCR like we...
This is the invasive species of mussels.
Yeah, and so you could detect them before they become a problem because it's detectable at the DNA level when they're in their pre-larval, I don't know the life cycle of a zebra mussel. But he would take just samples from lakes and from boats and detect zebra mussels and tell the lake system down the road. And then his remediation he was working on was a microalgae, which is what they eat, that has a toxin specific only to zebra mussels. So they would be like eating this in the water and they'd all die and everything else would just carry on as usual.
And so he's looking at it at the like genetic level.
Correct.
And this is a thing that most people don't have the ability to do in their kitchens. They don't have the ability, and unless they work for like Johnson & Johnson or some huge company or the Defense Department, they probably don't have the ability to do that. So in a way, kind of, and I hate to cause a panic here, like a crazy person like Dr. Rosetta Stone, like if she were operating today, and I pray she's not, she would be operating in a lab like the one across the street at the Bioscience Incubator.
And if she needs lab space and anybody knows her, we only charge a really nominal fee. It's a really easy process. We could get her lab space tomorrow. Yeah.
And by the way, just as an aside, that Agent Ruby website that was on there, somebody check and see if that's still up. Because it was actually operating for at least a few years, and the artist who was administering it, and it was like Tilda Swinton as Ruby would like help you like make your grocery list and stuff in a highly rudimentary way.
Life coaching by Ruby.
Life coaching by one of Tilda Swinton's weird clones. So this is what's the most bizarre aspect of this film to you both watching it, like, because we never know what's going to happen exactly with science because there's so many different timelines, so many different variables. It's going to branch off into some different thing. And this is the imagination of, 23 years ago, and nobody really knew what was going to happen. We still don't know what's going to happen. When you look at it now, what are the things that seem bizarre and what are the things that seem kind of plausible?
The thing that actually struck me watching this again is in generative AI, when you're running it on your machine, it's called stable diffusion. That when you generate a image based off of a prompt and a negative prompt, it randomizes a whole bunch of variables in creating that image, and the thing that it lands on, almost like its coordinates, is called a seed. So I found it oddly like predictive.
Yeah.
That in order to feed these automatons, these AI hybrids, they have to be fed like seed. Seed,
yes, right. Seed, yes. In a different sense, yeah.
But when she was, at the very end and she was pulling up to say, I'm going to be quarantined or whatever, she's doing FaceTime on her phone in 2002, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, 01. So a lot of that was predictive.
To be
Yeah.
fair, we all saw that one coming. Just like we saw like bicycle helicopters coming.
Right, because the Jetsons showed that to us years ago.
Yeah, we knew that was going to happen. So like for you, what's like the most like crazy bizarre like come on guys of this movie?
I don't know about the crazy bizarre, the confusion between a computer virus and a virus, and then it's the same thing, but it's a different thing, and it's on a chip, but that's not how virus. Like that part was just my brain just going. Wait, maybe they say it again, I'll understand it.
Yeah, yeah.
But is that predictive? Like, is that where we're going? 'Cause
I mean, the era is like the dawn. The internet is maturing. We don't know. We're on the edge of a knife at the year 2000. Like Y2K, the internet is a big thing. We don't know if it's going to be a net positive or a net negative.
Literally.
For culture, right? So this idea of like perhaps transhumanism, people trying to do biohacking themselves, put a
That was
RFID
huge. Yeah.
in their
Yeah.
hand. It was all happening during that moment. The Matrix had just come out.
Yeah, yeah.
So I think this was very much on the bubble. The film itself feels like it's on the edge of a knife as well. The film, according to IMDb, was filmed on a F900 camera,
Yeah.
which is like the same camera that Star Wars Episode 2 was made.
Yeah, yeah.
Like it is the turning of the page going from photography, like actual film, into digital photography.
Yeah, another really sort of interesting thing is like we have people on computers, and even though like obviously it's a ludicrous aspect of this that a computer virus would become a human virus, that is, we can go through, and I think it's my belief, it's my understanding that genetic sequencing can be done on, they actually do it on computers in where you work, don't they?
they do, but what would be interesting? I mean, so yes, we have a DNA sequencer, like 23andMe, whatever. We can do that technology, and it's not actually as it's sophisticated, and you get huge amounts of data in one experiment, and I think that's going to be the place where AI comes in, is like sort of finding the needle in the haystack. But I had a company that was touring through that was talking about using DNA instead of computer chips for data storage, because it's got 3 codons instead of just ones and zeros. You can do genetic code, and my brain still doesn't quite get around it, but it makes me go, crap, here we go, y'all.
And that probably is like where this actually is a little prescient, probably in thinking of this code and this code as being similar. And if like, now these people may be just totally full of it, like you don't really know, but it's
I
like
don't
they're smart enough to be like, have figured out that how to tour your lab, like me. They're smart enough to have figured that out, so like there might be something
I told him
to
all
it.
kinds of crazy stuff that he believed.
And so like people are coming through, these are people like us. These are basically, I mean, often they're people that have had many years of they're being students, but they're not working for these giant companies, and they're doing their own R&D. And so I think that's what's so fascinating about it, is that we really are probably going to have some innovations that are coming out of there. Is there anything that's sort of been innovated that's that you know of that's come out of your bioscience initiative?
One of the companies we have in there right now is pretty interesting. It's a local Austin musician who has an 8-year-old daughter with a rare disease. And these parents, they all start foundations. They're a really tight-knit community. They support each other. They raise money. They raise awareness. But that's kind of where their skills stop, right? They do a lot of research. They're actually like encyclopedic about their kids' specific mutation. And so this guy came to me, and he just meets people. He's very charming. He's very engaged. He meets all the people that might be a resource to him somewhere in the future. And then like 6 months later, they applied for lab space. And I was like, what in the world are they going to do in the lab? And he had met a local scientist that kind of laid out a roadmap. He said, if we could just turn her gene off, she'd be a lot better off because it's making this, this gum, this broken protein that's gumming up the system. And if we could just turn it off, she'd be better off. And often when you turn a gene off, a sister gene will kick in. And so how you turn genes off is little sequences of RNA that bind to the DNA sequence, but you got to find the right sequence and it has to bind in the right spot. And so they sussed out that if they took a blood sample from this kid and they set it off and had the stem cells extracted from it, and then they could have them made into cell lines so you could grow them for, a little bit longer, not indefinitely, and then they could test these little RNA molecules. And one of the founders is a programmer who's working on the algorithm to actually screen these little RNA molecules. And so I'm like, you know what? It's better than sitting around waiting for your kid to die. It'll take you 30 years to do this, but I'm in. These guys, I'll help them. They're in animal trials right now with a drug for this kid a year later. So they have RNA molecules that turn her gene off in the cells that they grow in the lab. They had a mouse generated that mimics her disease. They've tried it in that. It knocks the gene down. The sister gene kicks in. And then their business is to sell this package of services to other parents of rare diseases. And they have 2 other that they've got candidates that might be.
That's amazing. I was going to make a joke about how some people do anything to win a Parent of the Year award, but that's truly like an amazing story. And like, I'm wishing them the best. Like, that's incredible.
The tricky part, though, and to that point of their company, is if they find a potential drug for this family, the family owns the IP for that, so that they're not trying to do anything. But I don't know if there's a pathway legally to actually get it in these kids, and I don't know what the path from that point forward is. And I hope they're not giving false hope to all these families, but that's the part that sounds like, oh yeah, we got it, but I don't know if that's still 10 years out or 2 years out.
Yeah, it's amazing that like that level, without having to go to some huge drug company and convince them we should do this, which is never going to happen because they may not see the profit motive at the end.
And what I've heard happens, and hopefully it's just hearsay, but I don't think it is they get some a big drug company that will take it on and say, okay, we'll do this, and then they get to a certain point and never mind, and they shelve it, and nobody gets it.
Yeah, and you very well could have people doing some mad science applications in these kinds of things, and because there would be no way to interest like a giant corporation, and giant corporations do R&D all the time, and they interest people. They'll have students that'll apply with them and so far, and as long as there's some profit generation motive, you get to keep doing that lab space. But what you're offering is so unique and different, and the city of Austin is funding all of this, which I thought was such a fascinating thing.
So ACC gets its money from your property tax, and so they support us. But it was originally funded by a state economic development grant. So the state of Texas gave the college $5 million to help build it out. ACC bought a mall, like you do, and so having 1 million square feet of real estate helps. But then it's currently running off of the revenue that we generate from that. With obviously the college does not charge us rent; they don't charge us utilities. But so it's not really the city of Austin, but yes, it's Austin Community College.
And it's literally right across the street. If you walked out the door, which I don't recommend, if you walked out the door and walked right across the street, it's there, and it's closed, but it's there. And you can actually go and visit the Discovery Center, and you don't have to you can be like a grown-up and walk into the Discovery Center.
Little and a grown-up, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
We are open. The little spot that I'm in, that little makerspace, we call the Forge, because that's when you come in with an idea, and we kind of, we are very excitable makers. So from it being Arduino to 3D printing to laser cutting to thermal plastics and rivets and all this other crazy stuff, we kind of smash everything together. We are an eclectic accumulation of makers, from industrial designers to I have a little bit of experience in escape room design. So we try to, being the manager there, the thing I tell the folks there working with me is do cool shit. And since we're open to the public, we all are very excitable and wanting to talk to folks about it.
And nobody has a problem with you using these kind of curse words in front of children?
They encourage it. But going back to the Bioscience Incubator, the thing as a barbecue aficionado, the thing that really excited me is the one company making artificial brisket.
Lab-grown brisket. That is illegal in Florida. They outlawed lab-grown meat.
Well, they have no other problems in Florida. So they were just looking for something, some problem to solve. So lab-grown brisket, how is it? Have you had it? I know you have. You must have.
They haven't made enough of it, but it was funny when they first got there, and I knew that they had not made very much of it yet. They said, so what is the policy on eating in the lab? Because, we're going to have to taste this. And I said, oh, my God, you guys have that much? And they said, and we'll have to cook it. And I was like, I don't really have a policy on that. You do whatever you need to do, and if it causes a problem, I'll let you know.
Yeah.
Yeah. No,
We'll all know if it causes a problem.
Right. Well,
Let's
if it's
face
up in
it.
smoke.
It'll be in the news.
They didn't get that far. They ran out of money. They moved out. I still consider them a member company because I think that they're going to be back. I mean, they're not giving up.
Yeah, and with the cost of brisket, which
Right?
getting higher and higher every day, then I think, that'll be the case. So you brought some slides. What I want to do is I want to run through your slides, and we'll talk about them, and then we'll get some just kind of some discussion points. So these don't have to be questions, but we are talking about two people that are very immersed in modern popular science and who are doing this every day for a living. So I'm looking at the first slide here: incubating companies, incubating a workforce, incubating an industry, which seems to be largely the points that we've been sort of covering. I'll move on to the next slide, which I got to turn the damn thing on. Move on to the next slide here. So, what is that we're looking at? What is that a photo of?
So, like I said, the college outfitted this space with close to $2 million worth of equipment. And the analogy I often give is a group house, right? Like you get your space that's in your room, but you still have access to the living room, the dining room, the kitchen. This is the kitchen. This is all the coffee makers and blenders of the lab world. Every single one of these companies would have to go buy all that stuff and more to use it for maybe 10 minutes a week. But they need it. And so by us buying 2 of them, 3 of them, whatever, they can just come in and use it.
Yeah, and let's see. You don't mean literally coffee makers. You mean like coffee makers,
Right,
yes.
the necessary things.
Right,
like a
sure,
coffee
sure.
maker, right?
Right. And then what are we seeing here?
So why does the college rent lab space to biotech companies, right? Like, that doesn't make any sense. But they really would love, the state would really love Austin to be more of a biotech town. And we have a biotechnology program. And we really like to have more internships and jobs for the students coming through that program. And so if we help these small companies get a start and they grow and they stay in Austin, they're going to help our students get jobs, and that's going to feed the program. So these are 2 of the first interns we hired. I have a staff of me and 1 other person, and we have $2 million worth of equipment. We have tours coming through. We have workshops. We have all these things. So we hire ACC students to run the joint. They do all of the maintenance, calibration, troubleshooting, inventory, training. If someone comes to me and says, hey, Nancy, show me how to use this. I say, hey, Melissa, show him how to use this. And now you have a 2-year student teaching a PhD scientist how to do something. And so they get jobs.
Yeah, and that helps. Austin becomes a much cooler town in that case.
And then, like I said, we were really surprised at all the different types of industry that really are a good fit for us. We thought it would really just be pretty limited.
But we have all this crazy. What I don't see is like cloning Tilda Swinton on this, but I assume that'll be in the next iteration of the slide. Yeah, that hasn't happened. That's not your place for now. Imagine how cool it would be if we were just like lots of Tilda Swintons running around Austin, single and ready to mingle.
Well, you know what's fun? I mean, cloning is a technique like when you have to like make a mutation in a gene or whatever. So we do a lot of cloning, but everyone assumes you're cloning a person and not a gene. And so people do think that we have extra people running around.
Even as fancy schmancy as your Bioscience Incubator is, you cannot clone a whole person there.
We have yet to find anyone we want to keep the second one of. So we just decided to just stop that line of experimentation.
Yeah, well, I want to read that email where you have to like shut it down. It's like, no, we think you're a little annoying and your breath is bad, so one of you is enough.
Always a glitch. I will say that, the Minkett Center that Adrian's doing, like he's kind of downplaying a lot of the cool stuff they do in there. These guys are amazing. They come up with, like, I was in there on Saturday taking a friend of mine around, and we ran into Adrian, and he was explaining this project that they're working on for some school groups coming in next week, and I'm going to make him tell you about it.
Yeah, we're getting the YMCA. We're calling B-side of F1, the activity, where we give them a basic shell of a hypercar chassis. They get to add in 3D printed and thermal pressed cockpit, and with clay, they get to actually have the experience of being like they're designing with their hands the aerodynamic shapes. We wanted to then make a wind tunnel, but we didn't want to like get the sprinklers off because us breaking apart a vape machine for smoke. So we instead got an infrared camera that's really, really small. We got a big old tablet and a heat gun. So we blast that car shape with hot air and almost like predator vision. You get to see the hot spots on that student-made car, and those hot spots represent wind resistance. So we in effect made our own hacked together version of a wind machine using some real cool tech.
And then they can go back and iterate, right? They can go fix the aerodynamicity of their car and try again.
Go steal a Kia, fix it up, make it more aerodynamic. Yeah. You're all kinds of wonderful things in the community.
That'll be
you're
next
doing.
year.
Okay, that's next year. The whole hot wire the car thing.
So we got a wonderful audience here. Let's get a couple of contributions. These can be just like, if they're questions, they're great. If they're just observations, I think the movies are really rich text that we barely went into. But maybe there's somebody that has something they wanted to discuss. Anybody? Yeah, I see a hand right back here.
Thank y'all. What would you say to people that are skeptical of some of the work y'all do? Because, again, I think a lot of people don't understand it. It sounds like some of the stuff y'all do, you didn't even understand.
Perhaps.
It's a dog on Florida for not wanting lab-grown meat, but, again, without you never even trying it, I mean, I'm just curious, what do you have to say? How does that play into what you do? You're obviously on the edge of a new field, so I'm just curious how you grapple with that, what your thoughts are, how do you explain that to someone that might be skeptical?
Just to summarize the question, we don't know what we're talking about, and you never tasted the lab-grown meat, so why are you talking about? No, I kind of didn't quite get your question.
I'm just curious about, everything is so cutting edge right now we're talking about.
Yeah.
Lab-grown meat, you dog on people that don't want to try it, but again, I'm from Texas, I don't want to eat a lab-grown brisket.
Yeah. No,
So one of y'all tried it, you can't even tell me what it tastes like, but.
Once it gets made, I'll try it. No, so these are companies, right? So this isn't work that we're doing. These are companies coming in and they have this idea and they're doing it. And some of them will fail. Some of them will be great. It's not my business really to judge it. I don't even have to understand it. But I'm a molecular biologist, and so I do understand a lot of it, and I do understand the basic mechanisms of what a lot of these people are doing, kind of like the RNAs and stuff. If someone came in and wanted to, put their RFID into their hand or inject DNA into their friends, I would not let them in. But otherwise, it's, they have pretty basic plans. It's also not, it's for commercialization. So most of these ideas have already got some meat to them. They're often spin outs from like University of Texas or people that have worked in a company and have an idea that they want to take in another direction or whatever. But there's nothing nefarious, and we're there all the time, and we could see what they're doing, and if they do anything nefarious.
Is this really the line? Like, you're the line?
Kind of.
Yeah? I feel pretty good with that. Having gotten to know you, actually, I feel like I'm kind of cool with that. I will say this.
Not accusing you of doing anything nefarious. Just more curious.
Sure.
And I would taste that lab-grown brisket, for one, if you said it was okay.
Well, it's interesting. It's a fun conversation piece. Take to like a group of people, like a party or something like that, because you wouldn't believe the range of reactions you get. It's not like, yes, I'll take it, or no, I won't. There's, well, I'm vegan and that's not, and I'm not vegan. I mean, like you can just get the whole gamut of reactions. It's wonderful.
If we can have the same stuff and no animal has to suffer,
Yeah,
it's like,
absolutely.
yeah, absolutely. Let's do it. We got to be wide open to that. I mean, plus,
And barbecue is just chemistry happening. Protein under duress from heat and moisture and salt.
fat.
And
Brisket.
Yeah.
It's all about the fat.
So alive or not, it's all relative. Yeah.
And protein, right? So umami, that flavor that you get from meat is amino acids. And so there's actually a company in town, I don't know if they're still around, but they had a proprietary amino acid sequence. It was like 7 of them that basically is the flavor of umami. And they wanted to sell it to people like these lab-grown brisket people to add the flavor. You guys work on the texture, and we'll give you this.
that's so
flavor
fascinating that
thing.
people can find the genetic sequence that is umami, and they could attempt to patent it, basically. That's weird. That's weird to me. But that's not science's fault. That's capitalism's fault. That's why that's so weird. Maybe we get another contribution that, yes, right over here.
So first, I want to thank you guys for doing this movie. It is one of my favorite movies. And
You'd already seen it?
wow. Actually, I have it. I rented it. I own it. So I'm so happy to get to see it in a theater. And every time I watch it, I feel like I notice like one other little thing in the movie. And I was wondering if there was like anything little, like even the photocopier that's like he's doing a photocopy of like Frankenfoods, and then the sign in the urology clinic is like stud.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
Is there anything that you guys notice that's like little that you really enjoy?
Deep moments in the film text.
The poster in the artists, the photocopier's room is the Dead Enders, which is a comic book that the antagonist is literally Science Corp. So I think that is a little bit intentional. The Polish artist that Ruby goes to, I think feels like it's almost a commentary on automatons, like these empty people with no heads, with empty thoughts. Anything from you?
I'm drawing a blank. When we were watching it, because this is the second time only that I'm not a diehard, and I do remember thinking like, oh, I didn't notice that the first time, but I can't.
There's a
pull 'em out
J.G.
right now.
Ballard book, the writer J.G. Ballard, who writes a lot about these issues, that's in there. And that often happens. That's one way that a lot of times a film becomes a richer text, is like you see a book on a shelf and, eventually, and it's almost like a web link, somebody is going to be a super fan of that movie and is going to find that J.G. Ballard book and read it. And that's the artist at work, doing all that kind of stuff. Let's see if we got any other, maybe one or two more sort of questions or contributions for our audience before we wrap it up, because it is a school night. Anybody else got anything they want to say? Josh, I know you're here. It's a favorite movie of yours. Anybody else has anything they want to contribute? Or we just, all right, let's all meet tomorrow at, what time does the Bioscience Incubator open?
What's tomorrow? Friday, 6:30 p.m. And there will be nobody there.
It opens at 6:30 p.m.? What time does it open tomorrow?
It's not really open.
Okay.
The companies that work there have 24/7 access. They're there
Okay.
now if they want. I'll be in the morning, but
So we'll
not
all
really
meet
an
there
open to
at
the
9 a.m.
there you go. Actually, we have there's a Verizon hosts a summer camp for underserved kids, and there's 100 and something of them, and they break them into 9 groups, and they're going throughout the campus. The campus is amazing.
Round robin.
What's that?
They're going round robin.
Oh, I thought you said Round Rock. I'm like, no, they're at Highland.
They're going to culinary, yeah.
So they have 9 stations in the campus, and I showed Lars a bunch of them. But our culinary program has a student-run restaurant. Our health sciences has a full-on hospital. The music department has professional recording studios. This is where they teach the classes, and so they're going to take these students. We get a half an hour at each station, and so we're doing pipetting competition. Culinary is probably doing pastry piping. I don't know.
Yeah. ACC is amazing, and I had never actually really been over there until I went over to visit with you, and you just like kept showing me all this stuff, and I had to take a nap. Like I was so like I couldn't
He
have my
didn't
brain was
finish.
overflowing.
He actually left early
Yeah,
because
yeah.
he couldn't quite
I
hang.
could not quite handle it because there was
What
so
are you
much
guys
stuff.
doing?
So those students are coming over and they're doing design your own food truck.
Yeah, design your own food truck. Yeah.
That design your own food truck is pretty
It's
cool.
a fascinating thing. I love what you're doing at ACC, and everybody here. It's right across the street. You can go. You can take classes at ACC. Like I'm a high school dropout. Could I take a class at ACC?
ACC is for everyone.
It's for everyone,
Not-
even me.
Not only that, but like tuition is going to be free.
Right now, it's free for high school graduates, like people that
Oh,
just graduated in
Okay.
May.
So
Story
But
of my
it's going to
life.
get phased in. But like to Lars' point, like jewelry 101 at ACC is silversmithing. You can take a $300 class for 16 weeks, and you will be able to make things you would gladly buy.
All right, we're piling on a little heavy right now with the ACC.
Hey man,
So suffice to say, ACC's amazing. You guys are amazing. You just watched an amazing movie at the amazing AFS Sloan Foundation that sponsors Science on Screen. Lets us have these great guests, lets us show these great movies, is amazing. So thank you, everyone, for being amazing. Let's all be amazing together forever and create an amazing future together. Thank you, Nancy Lyon, Adrian Perez. We enjoyed it a great deal.
thank you guys for coming.